content and lots of cool stuff going on there. So those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Shama Maher. I'm the CEO of Scaling Retail, and I'm excited to be back with you guys on another week of talking about very interesting topics and things that are happening in the world of retail and world of business. Is really going to be centered around how we take a look at the different 6 touch points of marketing. And so what I think is really important to understand here is, as we're looking at kind of different methodologies around marketing strategy, oftentimes we find ourselves kind of looking, I would say, at things that are less, we look at some of the more obvious things. And I think, unfortunately, we kind of bypass some of the more areas of innovation around advertising and marketing that I think is actually super important to give some consideration to. So let's talk a little bit about different 6 points and touch points of marketing. And then if you guys have questions, please feel free to jump in kind of as this conversation is going. I know I have some funny shadows going on. Unfortunately, not able to get out of that today. So bear with me with all my funny shadows. But today we're talking really about 6 different touch points of marketing. So let's talk a little bit about what marketing strategies are and kind of how we actually want to be thinking about developing touch points. So guys, when we launch marketing, and every single time I talk to any sort of brand who's launching, the very first thing that they end up telling me is, hey, I'm going to be launching with a social media strategy, right? I'm going to be launching on, on digital, or I'm going to be doing advertising. And so what I think is going to be really important is that we actually take the opportunity to say to ourselves, beyond just looking at like digital advertising, you need to be asking yourself, where are my customer touch points? Who are they? And how do I actually get in front of them? And that, I think, is an important concept because it far reaches beyond things like, just your social media as a channel. And so they say sometimes it's, 5 touch points, 6 touch points, to be able to actually, close and kind of connect and convert a customer. And so as you're kind of looking at building out those different touch points, what I want you to start to think about is, where does my customer exist and how do I get in front of them? So is it that they exist certainly on Instagram? You guys are on Instagram. The best place to ask yourself is, where are my customers, right? That's how you figure out how you're going to get in front of them. So, okay, maybe your customers are on Instagram. Great, you're going to be on Instagram. Are your customers on Pinterest? I don't know. Are they? Are your customers receiving mail? Are they working from home right now, right? Might that be an interesting touch point for you to get in front of your customers? Other potential touch points are, hey, is your customer an essential worker? Are they maybe on a subway? Are they maybe on the bus? Are they receiving magazines, right? Are they getting blog email newsletters? It's very important to kind of take a step back and ask yourself, what are all the different touch points that my customer is potentially getting exposure to? And then how do I actually take advantage of those touch points and market cohesively? And when I say cohesively, I don't just mean like, hey, I'm going to, market this in a way where I'm going to try this thing, see if it works, and then try something else and see if it works. I mean more collectively, right? We need to be able to actually have a cohesive system of marketing strategies that we can implement, right? And through those marketing strategies, we then actually say, like, how did this work collectively? It's not a good idea to just run through one strategy and then another strategy and another one, because you're not actually going to be able to see how these 6 touch points work together. So I'll give you a good example. Almost everyone I know is really like, drinking the Kool-Aid on spending lots of money on digital advertising. Super important. I'm a big fan, but it's not everything. And when you start to unpack kind of the different levels of funnels with digital advertising, it's important to realize that advertising isn't just going to extend to, hey, I'm just going to do brand awareness ads, but advertising digitally also extends to, where am I doing banner ads, right? Am I doing PPC on like search engine marketing? Like, what are all the different touch points that I actually need to be considerate of as I'm looking at building out these funnels, right? Similarly to building your website traffic. Now, obviously, everyone wants to have, a tremendous amount of website traffic. But what do you actually do when the customer decides to convert and sign up for your newsletter? What does that funnel look like? So as opposed to sitting down and saying, okay, Shama says that we need to cover 6 different touch points of advertising or marketing or getting in front of the customer, the main before you get to those 6 touch points are, where on earth is, what's the psychographics? What is the system or media outlet that we actually need to be cognizant of, right? So how are we kind of planning out that sort of like media planning for them? And then beyond looking at just kind of the traditional media plan, we then take a step back and say, well, what kind of content do I need in order to support these activations? I cannot tell you how many times I talk to a client or a potential client and they are interested in launching advertising, or they actually have, let's say they're getting ready to do their photo shoot and they say, oh yeah, I have my photo shoot planned. And I say, well, what are you using your photos for? For the website. Okay, well, what else? Okay, I'm using them for advertising. Okay, what kind of advertising? And little do they realize, right? And many of you guys today may not realize this, but as you are planning out your photo shoots, you actually need to be very conscientious of having the right photographs that have the right dimensionality, that are justified to the right or left, that have the right amount of negative space, so that you can actually facilitate and support all the different platforms that you want to be advertising on, or you want to have content on. And the reason why I find that to be so important is that without necessarily having that mapped out, you might end up with like the most amazing photo shoot, and you get the images back and it looks great. And then what happens? Well, you can't flip and use the goddamn images because they are not cropped properly, or because of the ways in which the art direction was laid out, right? So as you're looking at these different touch points of advertising and you're coming together with your own kind of cohesive strategic planning, it's very important to understand kind of, with this strategic plan, what kind of content and support infrastructure do you need to be creating in order to really facilitate that? And guys, we just don't often think about it or talk about it enough. So it's not just the marketing channels, it's also the marketing content. And to further support that, your 6 points of marketing touch points also do need to support your merchandising strategy. So when you're looking at evaluating, what your 6 are, right, that's an important thing. I'll give you a really personal example, right? At Scaling Retail, we're constantly working on different channels of how we're going to be marketing, right? What do those 6 different things look like for an agency like ours? Well, we look at it in a couple different ways. One is, hopping on these kinds of market updates and being able to give you guys insight and access into what it's like to work with someone like myself, right? Giving you insight into how we operate, how we think about things, right? It's a marketing touch point. Our own social media channel is our own marketing touch point, right? Our newsletter is another one. When we host webinars and we're doing things that are, we're moderating panels, or we're on a panel, it's another marketing touch point, right? I've already now just listed 4, right? It's easy to kind of see how you do that. At certain points in time, we used to have, PPC and ads running. That was another channel for us that we exercised, right? Sometimes we would do a sponsored email newsletter on a partner program, right? That's another channel. So the channels that you're working on, you don't necessarily need to have them be the same 6 channels consistently, but you need to be able to pick your channels and ask yourself, where does my customer exist? How will I get in front of them? And how can I do that in a way that is actually very strategic, right? Because if you don't do it strategically, honestly, you're going to be in the same markets, attracting the same customers as your competitors are. And if you don't have the right resources or the content play, then you're actually going to end up shooting yourself in the foot, right? And you're going to say to yourself, okay, well, looks like my $2,000 didn't get very far. My $10,000 didn't get very far, but maybe it wasn't the budget. Maybe it was the channel or the sequencing of channels that you were activating. So a lot of different ways that we can kind of start to slice up how we look at, market activations, how we take a look at where those customers are, right? Where do they live? What is the goal of these customers? I think that's extremely important. And then kind of as you're starting to as you're starting to think about, I would say the execution, right, of these platforms, something really important comes up, right? So the execution of these platforms is not just going to be based on, hey, Shama says, or my marketing expert says, these are the ways in which I need to activate in the market. It's we're going to be looking at customers today, and all of you guys right now. So what is your holiday strategy going to look like, right? What is business going to look like for you guys in Q4? What are those touch points going to be? Chances are you're not going to be selling at a pop-up shop. You're not going to be doing experiential. You're not going to be doing a lot of these things that maybe you had originally budgeted for. Hey there, I see that you want to be a part of this as a live video chat. Unfortunately, today is not a live video feed chat, but perhaps in the future we will do that. This is really just kind of unfortunately, a one-way conversation fueled by some of your questions. If you do have a question, feel free to type it into the question box, and I'd be more than happy to answer that for you. But guys, again, as we're kind of looking at what's ahead for you in Q4, we should be planning out what those activations are, right? So come Black Friday, right? What is your brand's particular point of view, right? Come, going into December, right? How are you going to be planning your merchandising and your product releases? And that, I think, is extremely valuable and really important, because if you guys are not planning this now, you're not going to be able to plan your budgets appropriately, and you're going to end up shooting yourself in the foot again. Now, from a customer behavior standpoint and how we're looking at shifts in customer behavior, I don't know if you guys have been reading up on this, but customers are still shopping. There's no shortage of customers actually still shopping and buying a lot of things. The question is, what on earth are they buying, right? And are they buying what you're selling, right? Are they picking up what you're putting down? And if they are not, right, then as you're kind of looking at your marketing communications, you really need to be able to kind of take a step back and say, like, okay, how are we going to be looking at introducing new products, right? New services, new things that people are going to want in order to better their lives, right? So market trends would have it that we're moving into a very heavy kind of health and wellness sector. Everyone's working from home. I would say take a look at what your product assortment looks like going into, oh, I got an itchy nose, what your product assortment looks like going into Q4. And start to build your campaigns around that, and start to pick your plans and build it out now. Okay, let's see here. PDF files allow us to scale graphics up and down without pixelation. What digital photography parameters allow us to use the same photos for web ads, posters, etc., without losing pixels? That is a very wonderful and highly technical question that I do not have the answer to. What I will tell you is to talk to a graphic designer or somebody who puts together graphic assets. So I would tell you that I have no idea what are the exact parameters, right? What I will tell you is that when I'm looking at evaluating a brand for launch or for any sort of campaign, what I will do is I will take a look at all of the UX, right? So how is the customer navigating, right? What is the art direction that we need to be moving into, right? So if I know if my newsletter templates look like X, which means that maybe I need to have vertical images, but my hero homepage image is horizontal, then I know I can't use that same image, right, in both of those spaces, right? You're going to have to think strategically about the asset allocation of those images, right? So look at your newsletter templates. What kind of images are they supporting? Look at your social media footprints, right? What kinds of assets and images are you supporting? When I talk about negative space, what I mean is on your homepage, if you're going to have some sort of text overlay, or you plan to have some sort of call to action, shop now button, or something on that hero image, you probably don't want to have a full bleeded, highly active very dynamic image that someone won't be able to read something off of, right? So you want to be creating content with these design parameters in mind. And each brand is going to have their own unique design parameters based on their website layout, based on the content blocks, the modules, based on their newsletter layout, and certainly based on kind of the regular Pinterest, etc. But kind of where am I going to apply these graphic assets, I think is very helpful for mocking. It'll also allow you guys in the beginning stages of like post-campaign, as you're getting ready to line up all of your content marketing and any other marketing, it'll allow you to then start grouping your images and say, okay, I'm going to be putting out, this campaign, which is going to last a week, right? And when I say campaign, it can be anything from organic to paid, et cetera, but a campaign as like a marketing message, right? I'm putting out this campaign. The campaign is going to last a week, a month. This campaign is going to live on these different channels. So mapping out what those channels are that the campaign is going to live on. Okay, now I know the channels it's going to live on. Now, what are the graphic assets and needs for those channels? And that's both photography and copy, right? So chances are you need your copywriter. You're not going to put the same damn message on every single platform, right? It's like, talk about like content fatigue, right? You don't want the same thing everywhere. But what you do want to have is variation of a similar visual direction, right? So your mood board and kind of your creative direction on this, I think, is really, really important to consider. So it kind of drills all the way down, right? You kind of drill it down to the very, simplistic terms of this, which is like, how are we pushing, live with the campaign where we have every asset supported, right? How are we pushing out with a campaign where all of the images are actually able to be used, right? That's not always the case. Sometimes they'll end up using one image in 60 different places. And then people are like, oh my God, but aren't there other images from that shoot? But the problem with that is, you have other images, but none of the other image formats work, right? So think about it in this more like mechanical way. All right, next question. Any insight on using Instagram to curate an audience by creating strong content that resonates and launching a brand? It's a really interesting question. And a lot of people have that question. To be real, like, are you going to invest a lot of money in creating content for your Instagram page? And like, were you going to do that already? Do you have a lot of resources so that you can pay a photographer and like pay a creative director to create an audience that looks beautiful and that's consistent and has strong messaging? If you do have the money to do that, then yes, you can pre-seed an audience and build brand awareness and build things based on brand aesthetic, your own identity as a founder, and also based on the identity of your brand without being launched yet. However, if your idea is, I'm going to build an audience and then I'm going to convert the audience, but I do not have the capacity to build an audience aesthetically and driven in a way that's actually going to say something and be meaningful and spend the time to cultivate it. So audience building takes time, right? Audience building is going to take at least 6 months, if not a year, to build an audience, right? Consistent content that's meaningful. Not everyone has the time to do that. Why? Because in the stages of launching your brand, you're usually focused in that year before launching on things like getting your production together, on getting your marketing plan together, putting together your budgets, making sure you have the right people you're hiring. So that to me is like a resource specific question, right? What are your financial resources? What are your time resources? And will your content land and be meaningful? Now, if you are willing to do the networking, if you're willing to put in the time and energy, if you're willing to make it beautiful, and remember, making it beautiful isn't just reposting other people's shit. It's coming up with your own unique point of view. If you're able to do that, the time, the energy, and the financial resources, yes, I think it's a great idea because it'll allow you to seed the market. Once your product launches, you're then going to have a pre-seeded audience that's going to be really engaged and they're going to be ready to shop. So I think it could be a really great plan. But honestly, guys, I'm going to say if you don't have the time, the money, or the bandwidth to do it, then don't do it. Save your time and energy and resources to do a launch the right way, right? And if you can do a launch the right way, you will convert well, right? And why is that? Because you'll get featured in the press outlets, right? You're going to see higher converting launch numbers because you're able to like execute it properly. So don't try to do too many things. Focus on doing less things, but well, right? I'd say that's the most important. Guys, any other questions or anything else around 6 touch marketing? Again, those 6 different touch points are going to be really based on your own kind of unique brand value propositions, where your customer is at, who your customer is, and kind of coming up with something that is strategic. So I would say definitely don't assume that, you know, what works for your friends is going to work for you. You also don't know all of your friends' budgets and whatnot. So I think it's important to realize that, you know, there are some considerations, right, that you're going to have to make in how you look at your kind of specific launch strategy. At the same time, as you're focusing on building out your 6 touch points, recap, please make sure you're building out your content funnels. And so that means your images, your graphic assets, and your copywriting. So you can actually support your campaign launches, right? Otherwise, yeah, you can be on all these different places, but like, does it really matter if your stuff is ugly and doesn't convert and you didn't actually spend the time to make it look good? No, it doesn't matter. Like, this is different. This isn't like a tech company where the thing has to work, right? We're talking about fashion. Fashion is emotional. Fashion feels, right? There is something about, you know, yes, people assume your product is going to work like a t-shirt would work or a sweater would work, but they're buying the emotional resonance of what it is that you're creating. And that, I think, is super important. All right, guys, that is all from me today. Thank you for joining. Thank you for engaging, being a part of this conversation. You can find me here next week as well, as we're kind of move through other interesting topics around retail strategy, marketing, operations. You know, this is your time to ask questions and my time to do my best answering them as much as I can. Excited and really pleased with how we've been doing with these one-on-one, like small group kind of consultations. So if you guys are interested in kind of being a part of that, please make sure you sign up. Very exciting to get a chance to work hands-on with many of your businesses. But otherwise, keep coming back. And, you know, to be honest, guys, it's great to see many of you guys back here over and over again. You know, it's always a pleasure to be in your space and hopefully influence you guys to make good, cohesive, strategic business decisions. All right, I'll see you guys later. Be well.